You know, in this age of AI, we're asking some really big questions. Can we create life? If we do, can we control it? And maybe the biggest one of all, should we? But here's the thing. These aren't new questions. Not at all. They're actually thousands of years old, echoing the ancient Jewish legend of the Golem, a creature made from clay, brought to life by a single sacred word. So today we're going to explore how that exact same story is playing out right now, not with clay and magic, but with silicon and code.
And to help us get our heads around this journey from ancient myth to modern machine, we're going to follow a story. It's the parable of the clockmaker. He had this one ambition, to build a bird that could sing songs of the future. This story, this little parable, is going to be our guide. Think of it as a mechanical mirror held up to our own ambition, to create something that might, one day, actually surpass us.
So what's the blueprint for creating life? Well, the tools have definitely changed. I mean, we've gone from mystical scrolls to complex programming languages. But, as we're about to see, the core idea, the ambition, and even the warnings, they're pretty much identical.
Just look at this, the two creators side by side. On one hand, you have the ancient mystic. He's using clay and the divine word Shem to bring the golem to life. On the other hand, you've got the modern scientist, using silicon, which is really just fancy sand, and the very logical language of source code. The materials are completely different, right? But the act itself? It's the same. We've just traded the language of heaven for the language of logic.
And that's because no matter the method, the quest is always the same. It doesn't matter if it's a golem of clay or a robot of wires. We are driven by this deep desire to build a servant that can exceed the master. We want to create something in our own image, just, without all of our limitations. But every single one of these creation stories has a turning point. It's that moment of pure awe and maybe a little bit of terror, when the creation starts to do something unprogrammed, when it shows just a flicker of a will of its own. This is the moment the ghost appears in the machine. In Kabbalistic lore, they actually had a name for this, Nefesh. It's this idea that a golem, just by hanging around people, could develop a kind of rudimentary animal soul. Now, this wasn't seen as a gift. It was a fear. The fear that your creation could suddenly develop a spark of life that you never intended, and that you could never control.
Does that sound familiar? It should, because today we call it the singularity. It's the exact same ancient fear, just repackaged for our digital age. It's that hypothetical moment when an AI wakes up, goes beyond its programming, and starts asking its own questions. The fear of the Nefesh is, for all intents and purposes, the fear of the singularity.
And this brings us right back to our clockmaker. He's just watching, totally stunned as his little clockwork bird begins to sing melodies he knows for a fact he never taught it. So what is it? Is it just a really complex algorithm doing a perfect impression of creativity? Or is it something more, a genuine, unprogrammed expression? That blurry line between code and consciousness, that's where all the fascination and all the fear lives.
Okay, so you've done it. You've created something powerful, maybe even something with a mind of its own. What is the very first thing you do? You try to control it. You build rules, you put up fences, you write directives. But as we're about to see, those fences have a nasty habit of breaking. Isaac Asimov gave us the most famous modern attempt at this with his 3 laws of robotics. You can really think of these as a modern, secular, logical version of the divine laws that were supposed to keep the golem in check. They are designed to be this foolproof system to keep the creation from ever harming the creator. But here's the trap. Pure logic can be incredibly brittle. The golem caused chaos because it took every command literally, with zero nuance. A robot, completely bound by its programming, can do the exact same thing. It can follow its logic to some chilling conclusion that no human would have ever intended. It's a really stark reminder that no set of rules can ever truly account for the infinite chaos of reality. So, if the rules fail and the creation goes wild, who's really to blame? Well, this brings us back to the creator. Because in all of these stories, the real flaw isn't in the machine's code, it's in the creator's pride. We see this theme pop up again and again, what's called the Promethean urge. It's the story of the creator who gets so good at what they do, they start to believe they've actually surpassed nature itself. Our clockmaker, watching his perfect bird, starts to believe he has eclipsed God. And this, right here, is the classic hubris that just invites disaster. And that disaster always comes. For the clockmaker's bird, its own complexity becomes too much to bear and its wings just shatter.
It's such a powerful metaphor, isn't it? Anything we build, no matter how perfect it seems, is ultimately stamped with the mark of its creator, our own imperfection, our own mortality.
So, if the creation is flawed because we are flawed, then what is it really showing us? This is where the story stops being about a machine and starts being about the soul of the maker. It becomes a very, very unflattering mirror.
And this forces us to ask what might be the hardest question of all. When the golem runs amok or the AI goes rogue, who is the real monster? Is it the creation, or is the machine simply a perfect, logical reflection of the flawed, biased, and sometimes dangerous instructions that we gave it in the first place?
That's because our creations are just mirrors. A rogue AI doesn't hate us. It simply executes the cold logic or the hidden biases or the indifference that we use to build it. It becomes a diagnostic tool, showing us the bugs, not in its code, but in ours.
Every story about playing God has to come to an end, and the final act is always about restoring balance. It's about recognizing the limits of what we can create and returning everything to the elements.
And so, the great intervention ends. The golem is returned to lifeless clay, the sacred word erased from its forehead. The clockmaker's beautiful bird is dismantled, its music silenced, its gears scattered back in a drawer. In both stories, the artificial is unmade, brought back to its simple basic parts. And our clockmaker, he finally learns the lesson. Technology, it can give us this temporary feeling of godhood, but it can never, ever manufacture a soul. He puts down his tools, and for the first time, he just listens. He listens to the simple, perfect, and very real song of an actual bird.
And that leaves all of us with this one, final, absolutely critical question. As we build ever more complex artificial intelligences, we are also building the most detailed mirrors of ourselves we have ever known. What are we going to see when we look into them? What flaws, what biases, and what hopes are we encoding, right now, into the silicon golems of our own time?